Hello YouTube, I hope that everybody is doing very well indeed. As I drive once again to the airport, I thought I would take the time to address a long-time subscriber. That would be Nisi H. Hello Nisi, I hope that you are very well. Thank you so much for being a subscriber of mine and considering my thoughts over many years. A few videos back, I had a comment submitted by Nisi, which I will share now. This video will present some thoughts which I hope is worthy of your consideration. It may even generate some healthy dialogue in the comment section, or feel free to make a video reply. This will be unscripted. Unfortunately, the flow may suffer. However, I attempt to produce responses in a timely fashion. Sometimes life is not so cooperative. So let me start my music and we will begin. Many people have stated that, in short, blacks in America have an unnatural mental life, that we have been Europeanized, that we have a white mind. Of course, members of certain Christian groups who derive from Anglo-Israelism, that is spelled capital A-N-G-L-O hyphen capital I-S-R-A-E-L-I-S-M. Well, these Christian groups, I'm sure, would vehemently disagree. After residing for a short period in Africa, I can say that I do not understand this claim. I can, of course, understand the claim Western culture has poisoned the world. Its appeal, in my opinion, was in its presentation via media and the glamorizing of the pitch that it is based on an objective reality and universal human nature. Though, admittedly, I never grasped that claim. However, I have also heard several anthropologists state to me Western culture transcends race and geography. I cannot support this claim. The melting pot abomination was not about compatibility, but the surrendering of group identity and destruction of individuality, though it was presented as the backbone of Western culture. In this ambiguous and shoddy construct, we were led to embrace within this paradigm truth is truth and values are values, that it did not matter who originally identified or discovered them. We were encouraged to cling to a sterile representation of culture as an intellectual matter, definitely not an issue of geography, ethnicity, language, class, gender, race, or national origin. I bring this up because I think we have been conditioned not to honor our emotions. I see this as something which was once falsely united with the concept of rugged individualism. Of course, there is more to this. As I took several days to process a segment of your comment, quote, unnaturally go against sane human emotions and qualities, end quote. What came to mind, what comes to mind currently, is the expressive component to emotions. Try this on for size. If we think of emotions as something, in most cases, I say most because I think it travels in reverse when dealing with art. That put aside, when we examine the birth of emotions, we can visualize a flow chart. That would be thought followed by emotions. Again, within this flow chart, we have thought followed by emotions. After acknowledging that sequence, we can further represent a breakdown in admittedly a simplified, yet I think accurate components. We can acknowledge that emotions can be thought of as having an expressive component. This is how we select to behave in response to the actual emotional experience. Then we have the psychological component. This has to do with the body and how it responds to said emotion. Then we have what is mostly generally accepted, and this would be the mind-dependent component. This is how we experience said emotion. In this country, speaking of America, the United States of America, it has been my experience that many blacks I have encountered have not been encouraged to express themselves. If they have, then a sizable amount of that subset has not been shown how to make their emotions work for them. This is more of an individual process, though I think we as humans will expand when science aids us to have a deeper comprehension of body-mind connection in emotional reactivity. Now, though I have not verified this concept, I would say part of the issue is due to electrical interference. Think Wi-Fi. This appears to me to be sound practical judgment when you consider emotions are detected by the brain as electrical impulses. So, the more obstruction that impedes, the more likely unnatural reactions will occur. The next culprit for consideration is food. Many poor people and busy people alike do not plan their meals or have any comprehension of basic food chemistry. Therefore, their identification of food, I would say, is inappropriate, definitely derived in an inappropriate manner. If it is in a grocery store, then it is food, right? Right? No, of course not. But we flood our bodies with hormones, aflatoxins, antibiotics, and neurotoxins. This leads me to ask, what does this do to our endocrine system other than inflame and disrupt? Can we expect anything other than toxic emotions when this occurs? To add to this, many blacks, middle class and below, who do not make wholesome food a priority, are plagued with cheap crap, which is chemical laden, highly processed, pesticide packed foods. Unsubsidized foods, think of true organic and unprocessed, is reserved for gentrified neighborhoods and the higher income bracket crowd. The lower income producers get what remains. So, what are we seeing here? I am encouraging you to consider separate parts of the all as defined as a quantifier, which can, if continued, become overwhelming. So let's leave it at this for now. Indeed, it seems zany to me that certain blacks will go out of their way via suppression of valid human emotions to accommodate the maintaining of harmonious relationships, a construct that they have attached themselves to, which in many cases is fictional. This is in regards to those who can give a damn, by the way. When issues like power, freedom, policy, economic disparities as it relates to purposeful repressive acts, legal representation, economics, and religious or non-religious toleration. When these issues and others surfaces, it can be demanding to articulate something meaningful and real. Lack of self-cultivation can produce feelings of inadequacy. However, we as a unique group outside of Africa, especially Blacks American-born, and deeply generationally rooted, are constantly attacked by the right and mislabeled as people prone to excessive complaints. Then we have the progressives, who tend to overly encourage emotional imbalance when dealing with values and normative claims. Some of them also have a very bad habit of attempting to speak for Blacks. I figure this also helps to suppress emotions by taking a parental role with us. Also, let me make a note here. Let me make a verbal note here. Both the right and the progressives seem to be also doing something else. They seem to be inserting a Black person who has disconnected themselves from the realities that many other Blacks who are not in their social economic class experiences daily. So chew on that, and I will swing back into my previous thought. Okay, I think I've gathered myself. This parental role that is taken by certain progressives, as I was going to say, and I believe I had said, suppresses or helps to suppress emotions. People do not feel empowered when this is allowed, and we have allowed it, and so therefore we are the ones responsible for fixing that. Now, as it relates to political ideas, this does not provide healthy soil where indigenous growth, here I am speaking of that which is most free from artificiality, can happen in a constitutional republic. Now, you presented a question that just blew me away, and that is, why are we so afraid to be human? Just wow. I mean, wow. Now, to me, that is a very deep question. My speculation can never fully satisfy myself, let alone my fervid carpers. I think part of this rests in the zone of disfavor. Many people are not comfortable with reports of negativity. Many people desire to receive commendation. This, I believe, is easily seen when we look at certain aspects of the Black Commonwealth. Think of those who practice respectability politics. Now, to continue, I think, this situation is negatively compounded by unthoughtful people who fail to acknowledge the importance of perception and intention as it relates to effective communicative outlets. I think we have to remove the lens of race or ethnicity for a moment and explore travel, trade, migration, spread of cultural influences, and dissemination of knowledge and understanding, including that of science and technology, in order to barely scratch the surface of this question. That is, without yielding to lack of emotional or intellectual penetration. That said, rules of business and trade relations that do not serve the interests of the poorer people in the world, no matter what their ethnicity or race, also contributes to a disconnect from our humanity. Loss and profit, dollars and cents, decisions affects people. Here, we see a system that benefits some, hurts others. This is to be expected in the world of finance, but we rarely take measures to decrease harm. In contemporary society, I can say, in more ways than one, we have been reduced to mere producers, or units that consumes resources beyond our production, which allows us, or I should say, those who are in control, whether they are in administrative roles or ownership roles, to disconnect from their humanity. That shit that is produced kind of rolls downhill, and we also find ourselves taking on their mind control, let's say, their social engineering. And therefore, in certain ways, and I'm not saying that this detaches us from our personal responsibility not to do this, but we indeed disconnect also from our humanity and view human worth strictly from a procedure of calculating. In doing so, it perpetuates the insanity and justifies the application of cold logic over human impact. By allowing, being preoccupied with, being consumers, we yield to the deafening trumpets of corporations. It becomes all about profit growth and reducing margins. Though necessary business metrics, it has become enticing but harmful, as intense focus on non-human elements has moved many of us away from the essence of how we connect, or how a business can achieve the construct of a sustainable product or service, where we are divorced from dignity, divorced from integrity, divorced from ethics. We are afraid to be human, in part because we have a society which has allowed various moral escape clauses to exist. Constructs that solely serve thieves, who specializes in persuading other thieves to surrender their valuable items. It also generously serves criminal gains. We are afraid to be human because many do not know what it is to be authentic. So when presented with the challenge of being human, it is more comforting to submit to a bleached flower, sugar-filled reality. Maybe we are afraid to be human because something within, maybe even our DNA, is being quietly rewritten to remove the basic human instincts and reactions to the threat mechanisms which surrounds us all. Surely the state and various privatized monsters can more easily make a profit when our will to resist is impaired. Seeking vengeance. Why are we afraid to seek it? Well, that depends on who you ask. I do not know if there is a lowest common denominator outside of fear, which brings me to a Bible verse or verses. If I remember correctly, in Romans chapter 12, verses 19 through 21, it said something along these lines. Forgive me if I misquote. It said, "Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. For it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good." Wow. Just wow. I say vengeance is inferior to seeking out a paradigm change. I think when we take an honest look at vengeance, we have psychological consequences that outweigh the need for relief. When I speak of relief, I am referring to balancing the emotional cost of personal loss. Obviously, elimination of people could never trump the growth of a society that values human life. I still think the best vengeance is living well, and I am not stating that I am in accord with the biblical verses that I had shared. What I am stating is different. So, if the best vengeance is living well, I think this translates in both group and individual practices. Again, I am not advocating some docile settlement. I am advocating not giving to your enemy that which she desires most, your pain and the reduction of your moral soundness. This said, the conversation of this option should not stop here. I gather that we are afraid to speak of it because many see this as support for a future crime. Maybe they are afraid to look at their shadow selves. Sometimes I think it natural we relish violent retribution. However, this is a misleading appearance of closure. Maybe we are also afraid because we have been hoodwinked by the plethora of vigilante protagonists. Presentations, again, presentations that occasionally appear in Hollywood productions and other media. Here, the exaltation of revenge is cloaked in the language of justice. This, to me, appears like a form of social conditioning that is in opposition to a healthy alternative. Justice should never be conflated with revenge. Okay, I'm going to pull from my memory that which you had stated in your comment. Please forgive me if I misquote you. You said, quote, "We seem to like to forgive when it is not us that we are forgiving, as if we are not even worth the forgiveness that we delegate out. It's almost as if we really believe that Black forgiveness is a superpower, and others are lucky to get it from us." End quote. That is so spot on. It really speaks volumes by itself. I think we as Black people have a preoccupation. And yes, I am about to make a generalization that I think is based on fact, based on historical happenings. As I was about to say, I think we as Black people have a preoccupation as a group to compare ourselves to whites. And this comparison is most unhealthy. I do not think this has anything to do with their actual values as individuals, which then becomes a summation of a white group. I think it has to do with how we perceive them or how we have been taught to perceive them. Many have fallen for group acceptance versus individual examination. Again, many have fallen for group acceptance versus individual examination. This makes it difficult to forgive those who deserve it. Think about it. It really does. It contributes to that challenge. And I am speaking of those who deserve forgiveness, no matter the genetics. We have also been conditioned to distrust members of our group. We are mimicking the likes of many white right-wing extremists and many left closet racists. We increasingly link Blackness to criminality within our own ranks. We see how this is done, yet many of us still do it. But then it causes me to question, have we really seen how this is done, or do we just have a superficial understanding of it? I would like to believe, yes, I said believe, I would like to believe that if we truly understood the mechanism, the hoodwinking process, then we could resist. If we question authority, if we question how we view ourselves as individuals, as a group dynamic, as a commonwealth, then we can clean up internal tapes which are damning, which are holding us back, which we have submitted ourselves to in our prolonged ignorance. Though I rarely endorse the totality of any book, I do encourage you to read The Falsification of African Consciousness by Dr. Amos Wilson. It is definitely worth your time. I'm going to leave you with a quote I have studied for many years, and I do mean close to 2 decades. Quote, "In the context of a racist social system, psychological diagnosis, labeling and treatment of the behavior of politically oppressed persons are political acts performed to attain political ends. For oppression begins as a psychological fact and is in good part a psychological state. If oppression is to operate with maximum efficiency, it must become and remain a psychological condition, achieving self-perpetuation motion by its own internal dynamics and by its own inertial momentum." End quote. You can see how the thought of forgiveness, the presentation of forgiveness, as it is colored by religious holy books, especially the Christian Bible, you can see as it is dished out to blacks via the piggybacking of certain leaders like Dr. King, for example. You can see how this is yet another psychological conditioning. We as a group would be so much better off if we could factually determine divorce of emotion. In this particular case, I think it would serve us well. We should determine who our true enemies are, both inside and outside the group, but not to be afraid of withholding forgiveness. Now, when I say this, I am not saying that we should submit ourselves to groupthink. I am saying that we should truly understand what an enemy is. And just because someone may say something that we do not like does not necessarily make them an enemy. So you really need to know what an enemy is first. After you have truly understood what that is, then it should be simple to not be afraid of withholding forgiveness when it is not rationally earned. I send you much love and thank you for your attention. Thank you. Be well.